You have been sick before, or you're sick right now, or someone you love is carrying something in their body that nobody has been able to fully explain or fully fix. And you have done everything you were told to do. You have seen the doctors, taken the medication, followed the advice, and still something feels incomplete, not in your effort, not in your care, but in your understanding of why the body does what it does and what you actually have the power to change. Most people treat the body and the mind as two separate things. They treat the illness as something that arrived from outside, something that happened to them, something entirely disconnected from what they think and feel and believe on the inside. And that separation, that assumption that the physical and the mental operate in different worlds, is the reason most people never find the level of health and wholeness they're looking for. Because the body is not separate from the mind, it is an expression of it. James Allen wrote something over 100 years ago that medicine is only now beginning to confirm with the language of science. He wrote that the body is the servant of the mind, that it obeys the operations of the mind, whether they be deliberately chosen or automatically expressed. That was not a metaphor. That was not a spiritual idea disconnected from physical reality. That was a law as consistent and as measurable as any law of nature, and it operates in your body right now, whether you are aware of it or not. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand not just why that is true, but exactly what it means for your health, your wholeness, and the way you approach the relationship between what happens inside you and what shows up in your body. Because once you understand this, everything changes. Not because you suddenly have a new technique or a better strategy, but because you finally understand where the real work has always needed to happen. Think about what you have been told about health for most of your life. Eat the right things. Exercise regularly. See the doctor when something is wrong. Take the prescribed medication. Follow the treatment plan. All of that is real. All of that matters. And none of it is wrong. But it is incomplete because it addresses the body as if it exists independently of the mind that inhabits it. As if what you think about yourself, what you believe about your body, what you say about your health, what you fear, what you expect, what you've been telling yourself for years, has no bearing on what your body actually does. And that assumption is not supported by what we know about how human beings actually work. James Allen understood this with a precision that most people in his time were not ready to receive. He wrote that ill-omened thoughts crystallize into habits of drunkenness and sensuality, which solidify into circumstances of destruction. That impure thoughts of every kind crystallize into enervating and confusing habits, which solidify into distracting and adverse circumstances. He was describing a process, a real and consistent process by which what happens in the mind eventually shows up in the body and in the circumstances of life. Not instantly, not in a simple one-to-one correspondence, but over time, through the accumulated weight of what the mind returns to again and again, through the habits of thought that operate below the surface of conscious awareness, shaping the body's experience from the inside out. Think about the person who lives in chronic fear. Not the occasional fear that everyone experiences, but the deep, sustained, habitual fear that becomes the background noise of every day. What happens to that person's body over time? The shoulders tighten, the sleep becomes difficult, the digestion is affected, the immune system weakens, the energy drops, and eventually something in the body breaks down in a way that gets a medical name and a treatment plan, but whose roots go much deeper than any physical symptom. James Allen was pointing at those roots. He wrote that strong, pure, and happy thoughts build up the body in vigor and grace, and that the body is a delicate and plastic instrument which responds readily to the thoughts by which it is impressed. The body is a plastic instrument. It responds to thought, not occasionally, not in rare circumstances, but as a consistent principle of how human beings are made. And most people spend their entire lives completely unaware that this is happening, that the quality of their inner world is being expressed continuously in the quality of their physical experience. Not as punishment, not as reward, but as a law. The same way a garden expresses what was planted in it, not because the garden is judging the gardener, but because that is simply what gardens do. Now let's talk about something that most people find difficult to sit with honestly. The connection between what you think consistently and what your body experiences consistently. Most people, when they get sick, look entirely outward for the cause and the cure. What did I eat? What did I catch? What is the treatment? What is the prognosis? And all of those questions are legitimate and important. But there's another set of questions that almost nobody asks. What have I been believing about my body? What have I been saying about my health? What fears have I been carrying so long that they no longer feel like fears, they just feel like facts? What expectations have I been living inside of that are so familiar I have stopped noticing them? James Allen wrote that a man's body is the direct reflection of his most habitual thoughts. And what most people never stop to examine is what their most habitual thoughts actually are. Not the thoughts they have when they're paying attention, not the thoughts they would choose if they were being deliberate, but the automatic thoughts, the ones running in the background every day, shaping the body's experience without ever rising to the level of conscious awareness. Think about the language most people use about their bodies. My bad back, my anxiety, my weak stomach, my family's history of heart disease. The possessive is important there. When you say my illness, my condition, my diagnosis, you're not just describing something. You're claiming it. You're identifying with it. You're telling your mind and your body that this thing belongs to you, that it is part of who you are, and the body, which James Allen rightly called the servant of the mind, receives that instruction and acts accordingly. There was a man named Henry. He had been told in his 40s that he had a condition that ran in his family, that his father had it, his grandfather had it, and that he would likely spend the rest of his life managing it. And he believed that story completely. Not because he was weak or foolish, but because it was all he had ever heard. He organized his life around the condition, described himself in terms of it, made decisions based on what someone with his condition could and couldn't do. And for years, the condition did exactly what the story said it would do. One day, someone asked him a question he had never been asked before. What would you think about your body if you didn't know that story? He sat with that question for a long time. And slowly, over months of deliberately changing the thoughts he returned to, of changing the language he used, of redirecting his attention from what was wrong to what was possible, something began to shift. Not dramatically, not overnight, not in a way that made headlines, but genuinely and measurably, his body began to respond differently. Not because he found a better treatment, but because he changed the instructions he was giving. James Allen wrote that thought is the fount of action, life, and manifestation. And what Henry discovered was that his body had always been listening. It had been responding faithfully and completely to everything he had been thinking and saying and believing about it. And when that changed, the response changed too. Now let's talk about the difference between two ways of approaching health that look similar from the outside, but produce completely different results. The difference between asking and receiving. Most people, when they want something to change in their bodies, approach it from a place of lack. They're focused on what is wrong, on what is missing, on the gap between where they are and where they want to be. And that focus, however understandable it is, however natural it feels, creates a particular quality of inner experience that James Allen described as the mind that doubts. The mind that doubts is constantly in a state of petition, constantly asking for something it is not sure it deserves, constantly oscillating between hope and fear, between the moment of prayer and the moment of looking at the symptoms to see if anything has changed. And that oscillation that constant movement between belief and doubt, produces a particular kind of inner environment that is not conducive to the kind of change it is asking for. James Allen wrote that doubt and fear are the great enemies of knowledge, and he that encourages them, that gives way to them, thwarts himself at every step. The mind that is divided between belief and doubt cannot receive fully what it is asking for, because the doubt cancels the instruction, because the fear reinforces the thing it is afraid of, because the attention given to the problem strengthens the problem rather than the solution. Now think about the other kind of mind. The mind that receives rather than begs, that approaches health from a place of faith rather than petition. This mind is not pretending that nothing is wrong. It is not denying the reality of the symptom or the difficulty of the diagnosis, but it has made a decision about where it places its primary attention, its primary agreement, its primary expectation. It has decided to agree with health rather than with illness, to expect wholeness rather than deterioration, to speak about the body in the language of what it is becoming rather than what it has been. Imagine a wealthy benefactor deposits $1 million into a bank account in your name. The money is there, it has your name on it, it belongs to you completely. But if you never go to the bank, if you never make the withdrawal, if you spend your days telling people how poor you are and focusing on the emptiness of your current experience, the wealth that belongs to you does absolutely nothing. Your poverty is not the benefactor's fault. It is the result of your failure to appropriate what is already yours. James Allen understood health in exactly this way. He wrote that the body is the servant of a mind, and that the person who governs their mind, who chooses their thoughts deliberately, who refuses to give their primary attention to anything less than the wholeness they're seeking, is the person who appropriates what is already available. Not because they earned it, not because they performed at a sufficient level of spiritual achievement, but because they understood how the law works and they worked with it rather than against it. There was a woman named Sarah. She had been dealing with a physical condition for 3 years that had not responded to any of the treatments she had tried. She was not someone who gave up easily. She had followed every recommendation, tried every approach, done everything that was asked of her. But something was missing. One day, someone she trusted asked her to describe her experience of the condition, and she talked for 10 minutes about the pain, about the limitations, about the things she could no longer do, about her fear of what the future looked like, about the diagnosis and what it meant for her life. And when she finished, the person said to her gently, "Now tell me what you believe about your body's ability to heal." She was quiet for a long time, because she realized that in 3 years of focusing on the condition, she had never once given the same sustained, consistent, daily attention to the possibility of healing that she had given to the reality of illness. She had been depositing her attention into the wrong account. So she changed the deposit, not dramatically, not with a forced positivity that denied what she was feeling, but with a deliberate daily practice of returning her attention to what she believed was possible. She started speaking differently about her body, not ignoring the symptoms, but refusing to make them the center of her story. She started asking different questions, not what is wrong, but what does the body try to do? What is it moving toward? What can I give my attention to that supports that movement? And over months, the body that had been faithfully expressing the story of illness began to express a different story. Because the body is always a servant. It just needed a different instruction. Now let's talk about something that most people underestimate almost completely. The power of what you say about your health. Not just what you think, what you say out loud, consistently in the conversations you have with other people and with yourself. James Allen wrote that thought expressed becomes action. And the most immediate and consistent expression of your thought about your body is the language you use to describe it. Most people, when they're dealing with a health challenge, talk about it constantly. They describe their symptoms in detail. They update everyone who asks about the latest development. They rehearse the worst-case scenarios in conversation after conversation. And they do all of this believing that they are simply being honest about their reality. But what they are actually doing is something more significant than description. They are giving instructions. Every time you say, "I'm sick, I'm tired, my body always does this, this runs in my family, I will probably have this for the rest of my life," you are not just describing a current condition. You are reinforcing it. You are agreeing with it. You are adding another layer of instruction to the servant who is listening to everything you say and responding accordingly. James Allen wrote that the body responds readily to the thoughts by which it is impressed, and words are the most direct and consistent vehicle through which thought is impressed upon the body. Now think about what it would mean to change those instructions. Not to pretend, not to deny what is real, but to begin speaking about your body in the language of what you believe it is capable of. To say not my illness, but this condition that is passing. Not this is just how my body is, but my body is designed to heal, and it is doing that right now. Not I will probably always deal with this, but I am moving toward wholeness. These are not just different words. They are different instructions. And the body, which has no opinion about which instructions to follow, which simply responds to whatever it is consistently given, will follow the new instruction with the same faithfulness it followed the old one. This is what James Allen meant when he wrote that we are made or unmade by ourselves. That in the armory of thought we forge the weapons by which we destroy ourselves. And we also fashion the tools with which we build for ourselves heavenly mansions of joy and strength and peace. The armory of thought includes the words we speak. And those words are building something, always whether we are paying attention or not. So start paying attention. Notice what you say about your body in the next 24 hours. Notice the stories you tell, the fears you rehearse, the expectations you speak out loud. And then begin deliberately and consistently to change those instructions. Not all at once, not with a performance of positivity that doesn't feel real, but one conversation at a time, one sentence at a time, choosing the language of what you believe is possible over the language of what you are afraid is inevitable. Now let's talk about the foundation that makes all of this work. Because changing your thoughts and your words about your health is not just a mental technique. It is an act of faith. And faith, as James Allen understood it, is not a feeling you conjure up or a level of certainty you must achieve before anything changes. Faith is a decision about where you place your attention and your agreement. It is the mind choosing deliberately and consistently to align with what it believes to be true rather than with what the senses are currently reporting. Most people wait to feel better before they believe they are getting better. They wait to see the evidence before they act on the belief. But that is not faith. That is just responding to what is already visible. And James Allen understood that real transformation, the kind that changes the body, the circumstances, the quality of life, does not begin with what is visible. It begins with what is believed. He wrote that you will be what you will to be. That let failure find its false content in that poor word environment, but that spirit scorns it and is free. The spirit that scorns the limiting word environment is the mind that refuses to accept the current visible reality as the final word, that holds firmly to what it believes is true even when everything in the physical world is pointing in a different direction. That is faith, not the absence of difficulty, not the pretense that nothing is hard, but the deliberate choice to keep the primary agreement of your mind pointed at wholeness rather than illness, at possibility rather than limitation, at what you're moving toward rather than what you are currently experiencing. And that choice, made consistently, every day, in the small moments of thought and word and attention, is what builds the inner environment for which a different physical reality can emerge. There was a woman named Grace. She had received a diagnosis that the doctors described as serious, and the prognosis they offered was not encouraging. And she made a decision not to deny what the doctors said, not to ignore the medical reality, but to refuse to let it be the most powerful thing in her inner world. She decided that whatever was happening in her body, the quality of her mind was still hers to govern, that the thoughts she returned to, the words she spoke, the expectations she carried, those things were still within her control. And she exercised that control with a consistency and a deliberateness that most people never bring to any area of their lives. She spoke differently about her body. She thought differently about her future. She gave her attention differently to what she believed was possible. And the body that had been given a limiting sentence began to write a different story. Not because the diagnosis was wrong, but because the instruction changed. James Allen wrote that circumstances do not make the man, they reveal him. And what Grace's experience revealed was not the limitation of her body. It revealed the extraordinary capacity of mind that had decided to govern itself rather than be governed by its circumstances. Let me leave you with the one truth that James Allen returned to again and again throughout everything he ever wrote. The body is the servant of the mind. Not sometimes, not under certain conditions, not only when the circumstances are favorable. Always. The body is always expressing what the mind is consistently giving it. And this means something that is both demanding and profoundly liberating. It means that the most important work you will ever do for your physical health is not in the gym or in the kitchen or in the doctor's office, although all of those things matter. It is in the quality of your inner world, in the thoughts you return to when nobody is watching, in the words you speak about your body when you're not paying attention to how significant they are, in the beliefs you carry so quietly and so consistently that they have stopped feeling like beliefs and started feeling like facts, in the fears you rehearse and the expectations you hold and the story you tell yourself about what your body is capable of. All of that is instruction, and the body is always listening. So get it better instructions, not as a technique, not as a performance, but as a genuine act of taking responsibility for the inner world that the outer world, including your body, is always reflecting back to you. James Allen wrote that you are the master of your destiny, that you can influence, direct, and control your own environment, that you can make your life what you will. Your body is part of that environment. Your health is part of what your life can be. And it begins, as everything in James Allen's understanding always begins, not with something outside you, but with something in here. With the quality of the thoughts you choose, the words you speak, the faith you hold, and the inner world you decide, today and every day, to cultivate. Because the body is the servant of the mind, and it is waiting for you to give it the instruction that will set it free. If this video moved something in you, if something you heard today made you stop and think, like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe to the channel. There is so much more to explore together. See you in the next one.